some of our 20-time wise guys that push people into subways and that hit people over the back of the head and that purposely run people over in cars. If he would take them, I'd be honored to give them. I don't know what the law says on that, but I can't imagine the law would say anything different.
Over the weekend, President Donald Trump told reporters aboard Air Force One that he would love to take El Salvadorian President Nayib Bukele up on his offer to essentially imprison Americans who have committed crimes, which is a disaster because Trump has been using a prison in El Salvador to deport Venezuelans who he claims have committed crimes, but it turns out they haven't. We're gonna get to the details on that story in just a minute. But before we do, here's some more from Trump.
If they can house these horrible criminals for a lot less money than it costs us, I'm all for it. But I'd only do according to the law. But I have suggested that, why should it stop just at people that cross the border illegally? We have some horrible criminals, American grown and born. And if we have somebody that bops an old woman over the head, if we have somebody that is in jail 20 times and goes back and shoots people all over the place and then has a bad judge or a bad prosecutor that do nothing about him, all they worry about is politics, they don't worry about that. I think if we could get El Salvador or somebody to take them, I'd be very happy with it, but I have to see what the law says.
Okay, the law says you can't do that, but
yeah, I checked.
With American citizens, thankfully, and I think we have prisons here, no?
Yeah, look, by the way, so look, back in the day when we had the drug cartels, we still have them, but we had the big wars in Colombia and in Mexico. And the number one thing that the cartel leaders feared was getting caught in America because they couldn't escape the American prisons. Our maximum security prisons are impenetrable, and everyone in the world fears them, okay? And they don't fear them because they get tortured in there or whatever. They just can't ever get out. So we have great prisons.
Like in terms of being secure enough where high security prisons will not allow people to break out or break free.
Yeah, don't misunderstand what I'm saying. A lot of our prisons are also
there's human rights abuses and stuff like that, which needs to be dealt with.
Yeah, terrible conditions. Rape is accepted. It's insanity, right? Yeah. So those are terrible. The private prisons are unacceptable. But in terms of security, nobody's breaking out, okay? And we've got terrorists in there. We've got everybody in there, right? So we don't need to send anyone to anywhere else, and we certainly don't need to send American citizens. And so I want to come back in a second and explain the recent Supreme Court decision that just happened yesterday, because it happened in the middle of the show, and I read it, and there's some really important positive things in it. But that's sometimes a complicated issue because he's using the Alien Enemies Act, and how much can he use it, what context can he use it in, et cetera. This is not a complicated issue at all. You don't have to check the laws or the Constitution. Everybody knows you can't take an American citizen and ship them to a dungeon in El Salvador.
Right.
That's not a thing, right? So it's amazing that he even says he's got to check the law on that. He's the president. That's what I mean when I say he's lazy. Not that he's not doing a million executive orders, he is. He says he never bothers to do the homework. He never checks what's right or wrong. He never even bothers to ask, hey, this thing that seems wildly illegal and unconstitutional, is it? He could ask any staffer and he won't do it.
And look, if this was the first time it came up and a reporter spontaneously asked him that question and he had never looked into it, I don't think, look, the president isn't gonna know every single federal law that's on the books. I would give him a pass. However, this isn't the first time this issue has come up, okay? This actually came up for the first time back in February when El Salvador's president Bukele made the offer to detain American citizens who had committed crimes at CCOT, which is that giant prison facility that terrorists and gang members are being detained at. Unfortunately, some migrants are being sent to, even though there's now evidence indicating that they hadn't committed crimes. We'll get to that again in just a minute. But after the original offer from Bukele back in February, Trump said, we're looking at that right now, but we could make deals where we'd get these animals out of our country. If we had the legal right to do it, I would do it in a heartbeat. That was in February, so did you look into it?
He never looks into anything. He doesn't care what's real. He doesn't care what's legal. He doesn't care about anything. And by the way, what happened to America first? We're shipping American citizens to a foreign country and where they have no rights, and we can't, according to the Trump administration in the courts, we can't get them back. What if you ship the wrong guy? Oops, there goes an American citizen getting tortured in a dungeon in El Salvador. No, and he had every and guys, one more thing about that. This is not a close call. Like, hey, you got into like the details of a trade deal with Japan and the president didn't know the third clause. Let it go, okay? You'll look it up, it'll be fine.
Now, look.
Can we send American citizens to a foreign prison? That's not close. Nobody has to look that up.
So Alex Kuick, an immigration lawyer and professor, pointed out that any such move would have to be preceded by a formal court process conducted in a federal court. He stressed, though, that he had never heard of cases of natural-born US citizens being sent abroad for imprisonment for crimes committed and prosecuted in the US.
Yeah, no, look, this whole nonsense about, all right, now everything's a wedge issue, and now let's start to pick on American citizens. But you know what else happened today? An American citizen stopped at an airport because he was representing peace protesters in college campuses. And they pulled him over to interrogate him about terrorism. And they said, okay, now give me your phone and we're gonna rifle through your phone and we wanna see all your text messages to your clients. He's like, no, I'm not gonna give you my phone. You can't look at my privileged communication with my clients.
I thought Trump really liked protecting those privileged conversations with lawyers.
Oh yeah, all of a sudden when it's not him, he doesn't care about that privilege. And all of a sudden when Israel orders him to start messing with American citizens and students and people with green cards and everyone else, all of a sudden he doesn't give a damn about freedom of speech. And he's like, oh, let me see your phone, okay? That's it, you criticize Israel, you're a terrorist, etc. Yeah, shut up with your freedom of speech, Trump. You never meant it. You're a giant liar. And the minute anyone criticizes you, there's the Israel issue where because his donors paid him to, he'll arrest you and try to deport you totally illegally on behalf of Israel. And then there's the issue of, 60 Minutes did an interview with my opponent and I didn't like the way they edited it. Give me $10 billion. I don't like your speech, I don't like your speech. You criticize me, I'm gonna sue you. Facebook, I'm suing you. Twitter, I'm suing you. Sue. Freedom of speech, no, my thin skin was ruptured. I have been aggrieved. Screw freedom of speech, never meant it.
Yeah.
Look, there's a giant difference between the voters and the politicians. I think a lot of his voters did mean it, a lot of his voters didn't mean it, right? But he himself never, ever meant it. He hates freedom of speech if it's used against him or any of his donors.
Yeah, I think that's a fair statement to make. I mean, that was clear in his first term as well, when he wanted to punish reporters who didn't ask him questions that he liked. Anyway, so just real quick, I wanna move on to the topic of migrants who were deported to El Salvador's prison facility CCOT, because the argument from the Trump administration has been that these are dangerous, violent criminals. They weren't just in the country illegally, they were here committing other violent crimes, which justifies sending them to a third country, deporting them to a prison in a third country, El Salvador, because most of these migrants were Venezuelan, right? So why not send them back to Venezuela? Why are you sending them to this prison facility in El Salvador? Well, CBS's 60 Minutes investigated the 238 Venezuelan migrants who were deported to CCOT by the Trump administration. Here's what they found. Let's take a look at this pie graph. Kamala Harris loves pie graphs, and here we have one right in front of us. So 60 Minutes found that 75% of them actually had absolutely no criminal record whatsoever. 22% of them did have criminal record. Well, I mean, they had some issues on their record. So for instance, the vast majority of them were nonviolent offenses like theft, shoplifting, and trespassing. And then about a dozen are accused of murder, rape, assault, and kidnapping. But the point is, the bulk of these migrants did not have a criminal record whatsoever. Now, before I continue, I want to hear from our Attorney General, Pam Bondi, because she was asked about this by a reporter. Let's hear what she had to say.
60 Minutes found that 75% of the immigrants who were sent to El Salvador do not have public criminal records. that true?
Do you mean in our country?
The Venezuelan migrants who were sent to.
Okay, well, they're not Venezuelan migrants. They're illegal aliens from Venezuela who should not have been in our country, who are committing the most violent crimes. So if you committed a murder in our country, we're going to keep you here, and we're going to seek the death penalty, and we're going to keep you in prison because our victims' families deserve that. But we don't have to charge them with every crime. We can deport them and get them out of our country and save room in our prisons because they should have never been in our country to begin with.
So you confirm they didn't commit a crime, right? Is that what you're confirming?
Thanks, guys. Appreciate the time.
Thanks, Pam Bondi.
Yeah.
Okay, first of all, they were Venezuelan migrants.
Yeah.
75% of them have no criminal record whatsoever. That's what she's being asked about. She totally ignored that and then proceeded to talk about making sure that justice is served for victims in America by prosecuting these people. But then she says, we don't need to, we don't need to do that here. We can just deport them.
Yeah, wait, first of all, if they murder someone here in America, I want to make sure that they serve their sentence.
100%.
I don't know what's going to happen in El Salvador. Nobody knows what's going to happen in El Salvador. So, and then this is a thing that unfortunately works so well with MAGA when they do this trick, where she's like, well, they were murderers, but they weren't. 12 out of the 238 were murderers. So look, if you're on the left and you say even the 22% that committed crimes and were undocumented immigrants and were in gangs shouldn't be deported, you're probably not going to win that fight politically, okay? By the way, I don't think they should be deported to El Salvador. I do think they should serve their sentences, then be deported to Venezuela, where they're from. And there's a regular procedure for this, and we should follow that procedure. We should not be light on actual criminals, okay?
Agreed, yep.
But when 75% of them didn't commit a crime as far as we know in America or abroad, on what basis are you sending them to a hellhole in El Salvador?
Why are we?
Just trust us? I mean, there's 2 guys that you arrested because they had crown tattoos. Okay, so one was a makeup artist that had mom and dad written over the crown tattoos and is clearly not in a gang, clearly not part of Trenda Aragua or whatever the Trump says, right? And then another guy who's married to an American citizen, clearly, and Trump administration admits is the wrong guy.
Yeah, they said,
and they say we can't get him back.
It's an administrative error. He was actually in the United States illegally with protected status. I mean, it's just ridiculous. Like, they made an administrative error. The lawyers admitted that in court, but they're still justifying sending someone wrongly to this facility.
And one of the guys had a crown tattoo because it's his favorite soccer team. I think it was Real Madrid. And he did a tattoo of them, and they have a crown in their logo.
Well, that's unfortunate.
And they're like, that's it, you're going to a dungeon in El Salvador. Yeah. Okay, so these people are in court going, you gotta bring them back. And so one of them was the reason that we allowed him to stay here. He went through the legal process. He didn't cross the border illegally. He showed up at a asylum center and said, I need asylum. A couple of these guys, one was because he was gay and he was worried that the gangs in Venezuela kill gay people, and he had legitimate evidence that they were trying to kill him. Another guy was afraid of gangs that he was opposed to and they were trying to kill him in El Salvador. And we sent him to a prison filled with gang members from El Salvador.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is just unconscionable. Last thing that is a tiny piece of good news in this is the Supreme Court decision yesterday. Trump made it seem like it was a victory for him. And they said, yes, you can keep going with the Alien Enemies Act until we rule on it finally, right? So they're technically overruling the district court that said pause until there's a decision from the Supreme Court. Number one, as we explained yesterday, that was a jurisdictional issue, and that was not ruling on whether Trump can do this in the long term. But there's a very important part of it that we didn't emphasize enough yesterday because it broke while we were on the air. All 9 justices said, if you're going to deport anyone, you must present them to a court in America.
Yes.
All 9.
Yes.
Clarence Thomas, Alito, all of them were like, no, you don't get to just send people out of the country with no due process, and if we don't know if it's the right guy or the wrong guy. All 9 justices said, That's clearly the law in America.
Yeah, and by the way, thank God, okay? Thank God that they understand the importance of protecting that constitutional right. Otherwise, you're gonna have a situation where the president or someone in his cabinet can just point to anybody and accuse them of anything, and without any due process, send them away to a third country, including American citizens that they're making an administrative error about, okay? That's why due process is important. Don't be dumb and do what Americans did after 9/11 in cheerleading the Patriot Act, which did away with some of our civil liberties. Don't allow fear mongering to convince you to give your rights away.
Every time you ring the bell below, an angel gets his wings. Totally not true, but it does keep you updated on our live shows.